Alright, UFC 299 is about to take place in just a couple of days. I'm going to start this new video series where instead of just making predictions, I'm going to look at each of the underdogs and I'm going to make an argument for why you would pick the underdog, basically. Because I think normal pick videos are a little boring. Because at the end of the day, it is like, especially with prelims, it's kind of like 50-50s a lot of the time, even though their odds are crazy. But I think it might be interesting to try to make arguments for some of these underdogs. All right, so starting with, and I'm going to be going by DraftKings because that's the um, betting app thing that I use. So starting with Joanna Wood and Morose. So I think a good argument for why you would pick Joanna Wood over Morose is Joanna Wood's a veteran. And I believe I'm pretty sure these people fought at some point a long, long time ago. Um, Joanna Wood, she's old, but she's definitely a veteran, and she's fairly consistent at grappling. And what I mean by that is that she's fairly consistent at getting you against the cage and just holding you against the cage. So she's okay for being like a well-rounded women's flyweight. Flyweight is probably the hardest women's division, but she's pretty well-rounded, and Morose just really hasn't beat that much competition, to be honest with you. Yeah, she's coming off a loss, and then she beat someone with practically her same record, and then loses to Jennifer Maia. It's just not a great record, but I definitely think Joanna Woods she's live. And she's actually my pick anyways, like regardless of the underdog thing. And then we have CJ Vergara against the untested Asu Almabayev. So Asu Almabayev, of course, has a great record as 18-2. CJ Vergara struggles with anyone who knows more than a single leg. And Asu is a really good grappler, but CJ's a pretty decent at stand up. So there might be one or two moments similar to the Umar. I'm trying to remember Bexat something. Similar to the Umar Bexat fight, there might be one or two moments where it's like, oh, this guy just got dropped, you know? So, and Asu also, he's from the same country as a common country that gets fraud checked after having really good records. But, yeah, Charles Johnson just beat the prospect. I can't fucking remember his name. But CJ Vergara, fast hands, might be a little dangerous on the feet for Asu. As long as Asu gets takedowns, it's probably going to be a rough night for CJ. But if you pick CJ, you're hoping for that knockout. And then we have Josh Parisian versus Robellis. It doesn't have a picture of him. This guy is a behemoth. I believe he's 6'6", 6'7", with a crazy reach advantage. And he actually has to cut for heavyweight. So this guy's like is he Brazilian? I think he might be Brazilian, right? Uh, Cuba, yeah. This guy is a fucking beast. He's basically the Cuban fucking Francis Ngannou. But yeah. So Josh Parisian could win. Because Robellis just hasn't fought anyone. 35 years old. It's pretty rough making your debut. Not many people who are 35, 36. I mean, we just saw Shamil Gaziv, a guy was being promoted as the next champion. I don't know if you guys saw ads for that. Shamil Gaziv was being promoted by like Daniel Cormier and a bunch of other guys. Dagestan, wrestler, former athlete of volleyball, by the way. And he looked like shit in every one of his fights, and he managed to beat bums. And he gets to the UFC, and he literally quits for 4 rounds and quits on his stool because he can't fucking see. Basically cardiac arrest, which was the leading theory at the time. Um, So Josh Bernstein could fraud check Robellis. Now, if you're betting, I'm gonna highly recommend you don't bet against Robellis, or you bet for Robellis because 4-0, yeah, he's a fucking freak, but I wouldn't be putting money on people who have less than 10 fights, especially before the UFC. Then we have Mikel Pereira versus McCall, that word. Um, McCall's a genuine 185er, and Pereira is moving up a weight class, so it could be a little rough for Mikel Pereira. Um, Maybe he's faster. He's fought heavier than 170 before because he's missed weight a few times. Um, but McCall McCall's a very methodical striker where he takes his time and he really waits for an opening. Where Michelle Pereira loves to just throw wild shit, and McCall might actually get one or two opportunities. You know, we might see a knockdown, we might see a TKO, early stoppage situations. Um, this one could be, there's not really a height advantage. The reach advantage actually goes to McCall, so it might be a little rougher for Pereira to really understand, a really methodical striker here. I know a lot of people are on Pereira's side, but I'll be honest. I think this is more of a 50-50 fight. I believe McCall's a pretty big underdog at plus 200 or more. Um, but yeah, McCall's dangerous, so this might be an interesting fight. Now, if we're talking about Jan Cutelaba and Felipe Lins, now the reason why you would pick Felipe Lins is because Jan Cutelaba has one of the most inconsistent fights of all time. Felipe Lins might be bridging 40 years old at a pretty high weight class. I'm so bad with kilograms. I think it's 85. Pretty sure it's 85. Maybe it's 205. Light heavyweight. I can't read. All right, yeah. So light heavyweight, 205. Um, Jan Kutalab is just inconsistent, you know? If Jan Kutalab comes out to win, he wins. And if he comes out to be normal, then he loses. Felipe Lins is a pretty decent grappler, and Jan Cutelaba has a tendency to rock you and then go for a takedown, similar to like Claudio Ribeiro. So Felipe Lins might catch a guillotine. He might catch, you know, he might take the back from a really bad takedown from Jan Cutelaba. Might even catch Jan Cutelaba on the feet. And the reach advantage is kind of heavily in favor of Felipe Lins. So Felipe Lins not a bad dog. Now the prelims, Pedro Munoz and Kyler Phillips. This one I'm actually not sure. So give me one. I don't know who the underdog is here. Oh, Pedro Munoz is. Oh, okay. Well, this is gonna be easy. So Pedro Munoz has never been finished, and recently he's only lost to title contenders. And Kyler Phillips is not well tested. If we just look at his matches, he beat Hani Barcelos, which we found out this was the decision. And we found out Hani Barcelos in his last fight does not have a great chin. He's able to get the back and submit his opponent. I believe it was Christian Quinones. But Hani Barcelos is just. He's really chinny and he's old too, right? He's like 37, I want to say. I believe he's 37, right? Something like that. He's old. He's old is basically my point, and it is really rough not being able to finish a guy like Kyler Phillips, or sorry, for Kyler Phillips not to be able to finish a guy like Hani Barcelos, which means I don't trust him to finish a guy who's never been finished, even if there is a 10-year advantage. Pedro Munoz might be a little shorter, but he's fought shorter opponents before, like Sean O'Malley. He had some pretty good success with Sean O'Malley. Um, the reach advantage is a little crazy, but again, I don't think Pedro Munoz isn't like used to opponents like Kyler Phillips as far as build goes. And Kyler Phillips seems to be pretty inconsistent. When I watch him, I kind of treat him like I watch Alex Caceres fight, or what's the other guy in welterweight? I can't remember his name. He's like bald. He just fought Joaquin Buckley. I can't remember his fucking name. Alex Morono. It reminds me of like Alex Morono. He's not bad, but he's not exactly the smartest one. And I think he's a little chinny. You know, he seems like the guy who can be a little chinny. You know what I mean? So, yeah, if you pick Pedro Munoz, you probably want it to get done by decision. I just think Pedro Munoz will actually probably win. Gamrot versus RDA. Gamrot seems to lose every single test to literally every veteran. Uh, he lost to Benil, and while he did technically win against Jalen Turner and Fiziev. Fiziev was piecing him up in round one and was going to absolutely obliterate Gamrot if his knee didn't pull out. So this isn't a KO. He would have lost that fight, judging on the trajectory. You know, this is like a um, Bilal Muhammad, Leon Edwards situation. Um, only if Leon Edwards fucking lost, I guess. But yeah, so he lost that fight, or was going to lose in my opinion. Fiziev's takedown defense and ability to just get back up. Dude was taken down in the middle of the octagon and then just walked up to the cage and then pulled himself up. No fence grabbing or anything. And then he loses, or sorry, he beats Jalen Turner, but this is controversial. I actually think Jalen Turner edged the fight, but it's not, I don't think it was a wrong decision to give it to Gamrot. But Turner did showcase that Gamrot's not invincible, you know what I mean? And then he loses to Benil, and he beats Sarukian, and Sarukian is also like, okay, I mean, Armin did have some success here. I mean, if we're talking striking numbers as well, you know, that's not how the fights go by, but Sarukian was doing really well, and we see where Sarukian is now, and Gamrot's just very inconsistent, you know? Like, loses to Benil, and then somehow gets a win over Sarukian, and Sarukian might be the next lightweight champion. Um, and then he was about to lose to Fiziev, and barely beats Jalen Turner, and Jalen Turner is probably going to stay outside the top 5 for a long time, but maybe even outside the top 10. Jalen Turner just seems to have not the greatest IQ. But yeah, so his RDA is going to be his veteran test again after losing to Benil, and RDA just went to a competitive decision with Vicente Luque. I say competitive. He did lose, I think, all 5 rounds. Maybe he won one of the rounds. But it means that like it's not going to be easy to finish him in a 3 rounder, you know, if he can go 5 rounds. So, and the fact that it's 3 rounds, maybe RDA tries to get something going. He's 40 years old. This might be his last fight. Like he might come out a little wild, you know. And Gamrot just seems to lose to every test, or at least get fraud checked, quite frequently. Um, I wouldn't bet the fight though. But, you know, if you're picking RDA, you're probably RDA by decision. Or like, nah, a decision. He's not gonna finish him. But he might outlast him enough to steal 2 rounds. Caitlyn versus Macy Barber. This is another one. I actually don't know who the underdog is. I'm gonna assume it's May. Oh no, Macy Barber's a favorite. Caitlyn's only lost to champions, but she is coming off a big layoff. Um, but yeah, she's only lost to champions. Macy Barber, 13-2. Flyweight's a competitive division. Macy Barber seems fairly inconsistent, and Caitlyn has been able to beat every former champion that comes her way, or champion. She's been in title #1 contender for a long time. Jennifer Maya, she beats Amanda Ribas, which is actually a really good win. It's aging really well. Um, I just, again, it's a year ago, so it's a little far off. Manon Farrow is what it is. Manon Farrow is a beast, and then Vivian, she's good. Caitlyn Chukkagian is pretty good. Also, she sounds like a tennis player when she plays. She has a reach advantage. In women's MMA, it tends to be the woman who's older, typically ends up being the more well-rounded veteran. And my take on women's MMA is typically the older the woman is and the more experienced she is, the more likely she's going to win. I think nothing else expresses that more than I believe it was Myra Bueno Silva versus Raquel Pennington for the championship belt. Yeah, so there's levels to the game, and I think Caitlyn might be able to showcase that she's still number one contender, even though it's a year off. This year might have been she's just waiting for a title shot. You know what I mean? And they're promising a title shot if she beats Macy Barber, so she might win there. Moving on. Is that the last? No, Curtis versus Almeida. So I believe Almeida's the underdog currently, but this has been kind of flip flopping. Yeah, Almeida's a slight underdog at minus 102 on DraftKings. So Almeida is really fucking good. Reach is almost the same. His striking isn't like on another level, but it's good enough to pass heavyweight for sure. And I think we saw that with a little bit with Derek Lewis, but more so in his light heavyweight career. He's just smoking every heavyweight. He just has that level of grappling that no heavyweight can deal with. The only issue is that he fights for submissions and not TKOs. I think he learned in his last fight that he needs to start fighting for TKOs. And the fact that he brought Derek Lewis to a 5 round decision while holding the big man down, I believe he even picked him up and tossed him in round 4 or 5. Yeah, Jolton Almeida is gonna have zero problem getting Curtis Blades to the ground. And Curtis Blades is coming out a brutal knockout loss from Sergey Pavlovich. Yeah, I just think Almeida's gonna smoke him. Almeida's someone you would probably play inside the distance, but you do know he can go 3 rounds. And the fact that it's 3 rounds, I think benefits more Curtis Blades than Jolton Almeida, but Jolton Almeida should have no problems getting to the back and holding him for 3 rounds if need be. So if we're looking at striking, maybe Curtis Blades has advantage, but if we're looking at grappling, decision, cardio, Almeida beats him in every other aspect. Moving on to the main card. I'm so excited actually for this main card here. One of the best main cards fucking ever created. Peter Yan versus Song Yadong. Um, Song Yadong's still the underdog. Holy shit! It's almost a pick'em. God damn, that's a look. I swear I saw Song Yadong at like a plus 200 earlier. Song Yadong, younger, very talented. Trains at Team Alpha Male, and Team Alpha Male is very good at finding a way to beat unbeatable opponents. Aside from Dominic Cruz, um, he has the height advantage, which is a little interesting. Also, Song Yadong's just a Giga Chad. He walks around like he owns the place. Uh, he has nothing but the utmost confidence. He's fought tough opponents for years. He started in UFC at a young age, 21, 22, 23, I want to say, around there. He fought Corey Sandhagen. He's fought, I believe, Chito Vera. Like, he's fought tough fighters, and made it very competitive. And while he hasn't beaten tough fighters, he's made it very competitive with the top of the league. Peter Yan, at one point, was the scariest man in this division. Now he's on a 4 fight skid. I think this fight will cut him. I just don't think Yan has it in him anymore. I think he's just too far from the top, even though I think he's still ranked in the top 5. He's just too far from the top now to make a run. Where Song Yadong, I think even if he does lose, he knows that he can just get right back up to that position. But Song Yadong's, he's a great dog, man. He can scrap, he can grapple, he can wrestle, he can go to a decision. I believe this is a 3 rounder. I don't know why this would be a 5 rounder. But even in a three rounder, I think it favors Song. Peter Yan's way slower start. So the odds he gives up round one is pretty high. And then can I trust Song Yadong to take down Peter Yan and hold him on the ground for at least one round outside of round one? Yeah, probably. So I think this probably goes to the decision. We also saw that Peter Yan was dealing with health problems, I believe, in his last fight against Marab. Um, and I think if that was a showcase of, hey, just wrestle this guy, he's going to slow down, get tired, or something. Or, Marab's last fight, he didn't even say that he was dealing with injuries or anything like that. So we were expecting a prime Peter Yan, and it was definitely not a prime Peter Yan. We've seen him not get robbed, but the judges swayed on Sean O'Malley over Peter Yan. So I just think there's nothing in Peter Yan's favor here. Song Yadong's probably going to be the pick. Um, and even as an underdog, it's kind of crazy. Gilbert Burns against Jack Della Maddalena, I believe. Just want to double check. Oh, Gilbert Burns is the underdog, huh? Interesting. So Gilbert Burns is actually my pick anyways, outside of the underdog thing. Gilbert Burns is a veteran. Jack Della Maddalena has nice hands. Uh, a lot of people actually shit on his takedown defense. His takedown defense is actually pretty good, considering when he got attempted 14 takedowns on him, he defended most of them, and that was off of I think 3 weeks back to back to back fucking weight cutting, so a little rough. Um, However, I don't think he's ever dealt with someone with Gilbert Burns grappling before ever. Gilbert Burns is really high level grappling. He showcased it against Jorge. Yes, he didn't finish Jorge, but might have been some cheating going on in that fight, being Jorge's last fight, trying to get a win. Was slathering him up with fucking, I don't even remember, like oil or whatever, showering, lasts a few days, sort of thing. Gilbert even called him out for it. But Gilbert's coming off an injury, which is the only concern, I think. Outside of that, yes, he's older, but he showcased that he still has a pretty decent chin when fighting Khamzat Chimaev. Some people thought he beat Khamzat Chimaev, and I think at that point you gotta wager, is Jack Della Maddalena on Khamzat Chimaev's sort of level? And while Khamzat's not known for striking, Khamzat is just massive. So I think that's like that outweighs the level of being a lower level striker. Jack Della Maddalena has pretty good striking. However, I think Gilbert is he's more experienced in that I think if he gets knocked down, he's probably just gonna jump right back up. He does get knocked down quite frequently. He didn't get knocked down by Bilal on a injured shoulder and short notice. However, and he went, I believe it was 5 rounds with Bilal. Didn't get knocked down. Made it semi-competitive. I actually thought he won 2 of the 3 rounds with one arm. Bilal also knocked down Sean Brady, and Bilal I know is ugly, but his striking isn't terrible, and it was enough to crack Sean Brady's chin. And I know some people are blowing that as like Sean Brady has no chin. He was getting beaten for like 30 punches straight to knockout shots, back to back to back to back, and was just eating it until one just finally cracked. I think the fact that even Bilal, a bigger Bilal, because I believe it was a short notice catchweight bout, even Bilal was able to bring Gilbert to a decision with one arm. I just think it's like this guy either A still has the pressure to be like, hey, you can't just run in and think you can win. I think that's from the Hamzat fight. Everyone thought he was gonna get blown by Hamzat, and then he showcased that like, listen, man, if you hurt Gilbert, he can throw bombs still. So I think we'll see that. I think Jack Del Maddalena might get knocked down once or twice, and those will be the rounds gone. And I think it'll be close enough rounds that Gilbert Burns edges it. So I think Gilbert will win a very close decision, probably 29-28. One judge giving it to Maleno and 2 judges giving it to Burns. That's what I would bet on. A split decision, most likely. And then we have Kevin Holland MVP, a fight I'm most excited for. I think MVP is going to get a highlight knockout on Kevin Holland. There's a narrative. Kevin Holland's never been knocked out. I don't think he's been knocked down. He might have been knocked down. I can't remember off the top of my head. I will say, oh shit, my head's out of frame here. I will say, MVP being 36 kind of sucks for MVP. Outside of his age, there's no red flags. Like, if you want to talk competition, because I've seen that narrative all week, if we're talking about competition, Kevin Holland can't beat anyone who's a top 10 level. You know what I mean? Like, if we look at his record, he beats, he loses to Jack Della Maddalena decisively, probably a 30-27. At least that's what I thought. I don't even know how people thought that was even close. Um, Michael Chiesa is shit. He's an office worker. Ponzinibbio sucks. Stephen Thompson. Kevin Holland also has this ego. This is a perfect example. Kevin Holland has this massive ego, and whenever he's fighting a striker, he'll be like, "Oh, I'm the better striker." Start losing, and then he'll shoot a takedown. Now, I know there's this narrative, well, he went almost 5 rounds with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and he was just striking. Did people not remember that Kevin was getting cracked, and he started shooting a takedown, and even Wonderboy was like, oh, I thought we weren't wrestling. He said, sorry, man, I gotta win. This is going to go one of two ways. Kevin Holland is going to pretend that he's a better striker, get cracked, knocked down, and probably early TKO. I don't think he's going to get knocked out cold or anything like that. Or it's going to be Kevin Holland just grappling and holding MVP down. And in both scenarios, I think it's a great showcase of also submitting Tim Means. What was that, 2022? Yeah. Submitting Tim Means, a guy who's 155. Oh, no, sorry. I'm thinking of Jim Miller. My bad. Submitting Tim Means isn't like a crazy fucking win. You know what I mean? Tim Means is just an old veteran. So, if that's his last good win, because he beat an office boy and Ponzinibbio, like, what are we doing? Like, he can't beat Derek Brunson and Marvin Vettori. Like, he's never going to beat a top 10 guy. I think MVP is genuinely a top 10 UFC fighter. And if we look at his record, yes, he lost to Mike Perry. He technically won until the sudden death round. If you watch it again over, he still wins. It wasn't just a live thing. It was he still wins. And I guess the judges just gave it to, the African brother, Mike Perry, god damn it. But MVP is good. Like, striking, he's on another level than Holland. And grappling, I think people are forgetting. I don't know if he actually, his record's weird. I think on the UFC it's going to show he's like 11-0 or something like that. He does have submissions. It's not like he doesn't know what to do on the ground. What was his last submission? Decision TKO. It was a while ago. It was a long time ago. Okay, it was yeah, it was a long time ago here. Where was it? Yeah, Achilles ankle lock, 2016. That was that was 8 years ago. But this means he does know how to grapple, and presumably he's only gotten better. He strikes with Wonder Boy. MVP's just the better fighter, Even accounting for age, that just means he has a slightly worse chin. When was the last time we saw Kevin Holland knock down one of the greats? You know what I mean? Or a top 10 fighter. Not even one of the greats. A top 10 fighter. Never, Just is what it is. So, yeah, MVP, one of the livest underdogs. Now, Dustin Poirier at the moment is the underdog. If you are picking against Dustin Poirier, the only reason why you've picked against Dustin Poirier is because you promised yourself you're not picking against Benoit Saint Denis after beating the the god-fisted ginger himself, Matt Frivola, by a head kick, and Ishmael Bonfim. Bonfim was shown to be just not as good as others. And Benoit, I promised myself I'm never betting against Benoit, so I'm not betting this fight. but I would pick Dustin because Dustin Poirier is still a dog. Yes, he just got flatline KO'd by a head kick by Justin Gaethje. However, I think that's one of those situations where it's almost a fluke. Like, it's weird to say there's no flukes in MMA, or there is flukes in MMA, but there just kind of is. Like, sometimes you just get caught and you don't see the punch. Um, to predict Gaethje to throw a wild head kick at Salt Lake City in the main event of a BMF title rematch is just like no one in the goddamn world would have predicted it. Not even Gaethje himself. You know what I mean? Wasn't in the plan, wasn't in the script. Happened, and he ended up getting the KO. I'm not saying he shouldn't have got it or it's undeserving or Gaethje's not fucking a beast right now or whatever. But if you look at Dustin Poirier's last few fights, number one, something that needs to be said, Dustin Poirier has never lost two in a row. And he's got a lot of fights. You know what I mean? Dustin Poirier, yes, just lost to Gaethje, and he only, oh Jesus, he only fights once a year now. Dustin, what are we doing, baby? He's never lost two in a row. If you look at his record, on Tapology or Sure Dogs or whatever, and yeah, he just got flatline KO, but that happens. You know what I mean? Especially when you're older. He's only 35. You know, a lot of people are saying he has been through a lot of wars, but he's only 35. Like, this is prime age for some fighters. You know what I mean? Like, he loses to Charles, champion. He loses to Conor McGregor way earlier in his career, champion. He loses to Khabib, champion. He loses to Gaethje, belt holder. You know? Is Benoit Saint Denis the next belt holder? Is basically what you have to ask yourself this. He's young, he's 28. He has time, but I don't think his time is now. You know? I think this is a really big jump, and we've seen it with Fiziev and Gaethje, where Gaethje was an underdog, Fiziev is the next up-and-comer, and Fiziev lost. It was close, but he lost. We've seen it with Gamrot Beneil. Beneil's older, Gamrot's the young up-and-comer, and Beneil wins. So it's just, is this old guard gonna persist, even with Benoit Saint Denis? My personal take is I think Benoit, this is a 5-rounder, I believe, as well, which only favors Dustin because he's the only one in this matchup who has 5-round cardio. Well, proven 5-round cardio. We don't know with Dennis. Dennis, he just doesn't have anything on his record other than being, I believe he was knocked out, if I'm not wrong. He was knocked out at one point on a, or no, it was decision, my bad. I think he got knocked down, maybe. That might be what I'm thinking. Against a no-name. So, and then he beats shit cans, and then he beats Bonfim, which is good. Thiago Moises is whatever. And then Matt Frivola, which is a really good win. But Matt Frivola to Dustin Poirier is, this is literally like Shamil fighting Bidet and then getting Rosenstrike. Or no, instead of Rosenstrike, it would have been would have been fucking like Tom Aspinall before he's got the belt. You know what I mean? Like, Dustin right now is champion level. He has potential to be a champion. You know? I just, I don't know about Denis. Denis just, he hasn't showcased top level performances against top level opponents. He's showcased good levels. He's showcased levels above prospects, but he is a prospect. You know what I mean? Like, he's supposed, in a prospect versus prospect matchup, it's supposed to be who's the better prospect. You know? And Benoit is definitely the better of them, but it's just, Poirier's a big level up, and I think it's going to be a rough night for Denis. I think it's going to be a close decision, or it's going to be a late finish by Dustin. Because I think Benoit's also going to try to get a little greedy with trying to get a head kick KO, because he is just coming off one, and then Dustin just got knocked out by one. I see the narrative that Dustin's got his hand glued to his head, or gonna have his hand glued to his head. I don't disagree with that narrative, but I think what's more likely to happen is that Benoit is going to be like, well, I know where his button is. Because I think it's safe to say every fighter has their button. You know, some fighters it's like a certain spot on their chin, some fighters it's a certain spot on their temple, and it's just lights out, they're done. You know? I think Dustin Poirier's might be back of the left ear sort of thing, you know? So I think Benoit's going to try to hunt for that, and I think that might be his undoing because Dustin mixes up his head, the body, strikes really, really well. And if we're talking about calf kicks, Dustin Poirier's calf kicks are going to be brutal. Uh, Dustin Poirier is probably going to get beat this fight. Like, he's going to get hurt in one of these rounds. Dustin almost always gives one round brutally to his opponent, but he always comes back with a dog, you know? And he's doing this fight to test if he still has that dog. I think he does. I think he wins. Moving on to Sean O'Malley, Marlon Vera. Now, if you're picking Cheeto Vera over Sean O'Malley, your narrative is most likely, well, Cheeto Vera has been proven to have 5 rounds of cardio. Cheeto Vera also has a win over Sean O'Malley. Even though he was losing the fight, he still won it. So he might be able to do the same thing. Who knows? Maybe that's just how the peroneal nerve works. You know what I mean? Cheeto Vera also, he loses every round in every fight except for his winning round. You know? And I think that's the best way to describe it. So even though Sean O'Malley should win, what are the odds actually? Because I remember Cheeto being like a plus 300 or something at some point. What are the odds here? Plus 210. Yeah. So he's still a 2-1 dog, almost 3-1 dog. I mean, he's a dangerous striker. We've seen that. He doesn't take a lot of damage. And Sean O'Malley might take more damage in the fight. Sean O'Malley looks a little more frailer than Cheeto, and if this does go to the 5th round, you'll always have back in your head that Cheeto Vera could come up with something. Other than that, yeah, you'd be rooting for a submission or late TKO for Cheeto Vera. Because he would not win a decision. Even if I am on the dog side, Cheeto Vera, zero chance he wins a decision. But yeah, so those are all the underdogs for UFC 299. I'm gonna try to start the series, see how it does, see if I enjoy it pretty much, because that's all I'm making YouTube videos for. I'm just trying to enjoy making videos. Um, Maybe I'll change it up, do some gaming topics or something as well. But I'm excited for 299. And good luck to all these underdogs. I think this is going to be a wild card for underdogs. I think so far this year we've had like 90% favorite wins. But I think this year's or this fight card is going to be pretty big for underdogs. There's going to be some fraud checking. There's going to be some old guard holding. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.